She walked into the country club in a simple cotton dress while they wore designer labels. They laughed at her scuffed shoes and called her the help. What they didn't know, her father's signature was the only thing standing between them and financial ruin. Sometimes karma works fast. Before we dive into this incredible story of pride, prejudice, and poetic justice, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss stories like this. Trust me, you'll want to stick around until the end to see how this wealthy family's world came crashing down in mere seconds. Now let's get into it. The Wellington family had everything money could buy. Their mansion in Connecticut sat on 15 acres of perfectly manicured lawns, with a circular driveway that could fit 20 cars. Robert Wellington, the patriarch, had inherited a real estate empire from his father, who had inherited it from his father before him. 3 generations of wealth, power, and influence. His wife Catherine spent her days organizing charity galas and reminding people which families were truly elite and which were just pretending. Their son Trevor, 32 years old, had grown up believing his last name was all the qualification he needed for anything. But behind the marble columns and crystal chandeliers, the Wellington Empire was crumbling. Trevor had made a series of disastrous investments over the past 2 years, convinced that his instincts were better than any financial advisor's expertise. He'd sunk millions into projects that collapsed, developments that never broke ground, and tech startups that burned through cash faster than a wildfire. The family was hemorrhaging money, and fast. They needed a miracle, and that miracle had a name: Howard Mitchell. Howard Mitchell was everything the Wellingtons pretended to be but weren't. He'd built a tech empire from nothing, starting in his garage 20 years ago with just an idea and determination. Now his company was worth billions, and everyone wanted a piece of it. For 18 months, Robert had been courting Howard for a partnership deal. If Howard agreed to invest in their failing real estate ventures and bring his tech innovations to their properties, it would be a $750 million deal. It would save them. Without it, Wellington Corporation would sink like a stone. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday morning. After months of polite deferrals, Howard finally agreed to meet them. Not in a boardroom, not in an office, but somewhere casual. The country club, he suggested, just a relaxed lunch to see if they were the kind of people he wanted to do business with. Robert nearly collapsed with relief. Catherine immediately started planning. Everything had to be perfect. Their clothing, their conversation, their image. This was their last chance. On the day of the meeting, the Wellingtons arrived at the Riverside Country Club an hour early. Catherine wore a cream Chanel suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Robert had on his Rolex and Italian leather shoes. Trevor strutted in wearing a designer suit, his hair perfectly styled, confidence radiating from every pore. They took their usual table on the terrace, ordered expensive wine they barely tasted, and waited. Catherine kept checking her reflection in her compact mirror. Trevor rehearsed his talking points under his breath. Robert reviewed the contract folder for the 100th time. Then she walked in. The young woman who entered the country club looked completely out of place among the designer labels and luxury watches. She appeared to be in her mid-20s, wearing a simple floral cotton dress that clearly came from a department store clearance rack. Her shoes were plain flats, scuffed at the toes from wear. Her brown hair was pulled back in a basic ponytail, no expensive styling, no highlights. She carried a modest canvas purse over her shoulder and looked around the club with wide, slightly nervous eyes. She was pretty in an understated way, the kind of beauty that didn't announce itself with makeup and jewelry. Catherine noticed her first. She leaned toward Robert and whispered loud enough for Trevor to hear. "Who let her in here? She looks like she's lost." The young woman walked past their table, seemingly unaware of their stares, and chose a seat by the large window overlooking the golf course. She sat down quietly, pulled out her phone, and seemed to be waiting for someone. Trevor laughed, a sharp sound that carried across the terrace. "Maybe she thinks this is a diner. Someone should tell her the staff entrance is around back." Several nearby members turned to look, smirking at the joke. The young woman glanced up briefly, her cheeks coloring slightly, but she didn't say anything. She just offered a small, polite smile and returned her attention to her phone. Catherine couldn't let it go. The club had standards after all. This was one of the most exclusive establishments in Connecticut, and they couldn't have just anyone wandering in off the street. She excused herself from the table and walked over to where the young woman sat. "Excuse me," Catherine said, her voice dripping with false politeness. "Are you perhaps looking for the service entrance? The staff areas are accessed from the parking lot." The young woman looked up, and for a moment, Catherine saw something flicker in her eyes. Hurt, maybe, or recognition of what was happening, but her voice remained steady and kind. "No, thank you. I'm just waiting for someone. They should be here soon." Catherine's smile tightened. "I see. Well, this is a members-only establishment, very exclusive. I'm not sure who you're meeting, but perhaps you'd be more comfortable waiting outside? The gardens are lovely this time of year." The condescension in her tone was unmistakable. Before the young woman could respond, Trevor appeared at his mother's side. He'd had 3 glasses of wine while they waited, and his inhibitions were low. "Mom, don't waste your breath. Look at those shoes. Look at that dress. Honey, this place has a dress code. You can't just wander into places like this dressed for a yard sale." He pulled out his phone and snapped a photo, grinning. "This is going to be a great story for the guys." The young woman's eyes began to glisten, but she maintained her composure. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry if I've caused any trouble. I'll just wait outside." She stood up, gathering her purse, and walked toward the door. Her head was high, but Catherine could see her blinking rapidly, fighting back tears. As the young woman disappeared through the entrance, Trevor returned to their table laughing. "Can you believe that? What was she thinking?" He immediately texted the photo to his friends with a caption mocking her appearance. Catherine settled back into her seat with a satisfied expression. "Well, I certainly did my duty. This club has standards for a reason. We can't have it turning into some common restaurant where anyone can walk in." Robert checked his watch, barely paying attention to what had just happened. "Howard should be here any minute. Remember, let me do most of the talking. We need to show him we're stable, professional, and exactly the kind of partners his company needs." They all straightened up, putting on their most impressive faces, ready to secure the deal that would save everything. 10 minutes later, a man walked onto the terrace. He was in his 50s, wearing simple khakis and a navy polo shirt. His watch was nice but not flashy. He drove a Toyota, which the valet had seemed almost embarrassed to park among the Mercedes and BMWs. This was Howard Mitchell, though you'd never know it from looking at him. Despite being worth billions, he'd never lost his down-to-earth sensibility. He believed that character mattered more than clothing, and substance more than style. The Wellingtons jumped to their feet, all fake smiles and eager handshakes. "Howard, so wonderful to finally meet in person," Robert gushed, pumping his hand enthusiastically. Catherine air-kissed near his cheeks in that way wealthy people do. Trevor launched into a rehearsed greeting about how excited he was about potential synergies. Howard smiled politely and shook their hands, but something seemed off. He kept looking around the terrace, scanning the tables and the entrance. After the initial pleasantries as they were about to sit down, Howard asked the question that would change everything. "Where's Grace? Is she here yet?" His tone was casual, but there was genuine concern in it. The Wellingtons froze. Robert's smile faltered. Catherine's hand stopped mid-gesture. Trevor's confident expression cracked. "Grace?" Robert asked carefully, as if the name might be a trap. "Yes, my daughter Grace. She was driving separately and meeting me here. Sweet girl, never cares much about fancy things. Have you seen her?" Howard pulled out his phone, presumably to text her. The blood drained from Catherine's face. Trevor looked like he might be sick. Robert's mind raced, trying to calculate how bad this could be. Your daughter?" Catherine stammered. "Yes, she's 26 now. Just graduated with her master's degree. She's brilliant but so humble about it. Insists on living simply, driving an old car, wearing regular clothes. Says she wants to understand how normal people live before she takes any role in my company. I'm so proud of her for that." Howard's voice was warm with paternal love, completely unaware of the horror spreading across the Wellington faces. Robert tried to speak but couldn't form words. Howard noticed their expressions and his smile faded. "Is something wrong?" He flagged down a waiter, the same one who had refused to serve Grace earlier. "Excuse me, did you see a young woman, mid-20s, brown hair, simple dress? She would have arrived about 20 minutes ago. The waiter's face went pale. He glanced nervously at the Wellingtons, then back at Howard. I... Yes, sir. She was here. She sat over by the window. His voice trembled slightly. Was? Where did she go? Howard's tone sharpened. The waiter swallowed hard. There was an incident, sir. These members, he gestured weakly toward the Wellingtons, they spoke to her, told her she didn't belong here, that she should leave. She went outside about 10 minutes ago. The terrace had gone completely silent. Everyone was watching now. Howard's expression transformed. The friendly, casual demeanor evaporated, replaced by something cold and hard. He turned slowly to face the Wellingtons, and the temperature seemed to drop 20 degrees. You did what to my daughter? Catherine tried to salvage it, words tumbling out in a panic. Howard, we had no idea. We thought she was just some random person who wandered in. The club has standards. We were just trying to... You were trying to humiliate someone based on her clothes. Howard's voice was quiet, but it cut like a blade. You judged my daughter, made her feel unwelcome, mocked her appearance, and drove her away because she didn't meet your standards of what wealth should look like. Trevor jumped in desperate. It was just a misunderstanding. A joke, really. We didn't mean anything by it. You took a photo of her to mock her with your friends. It wasn't a question. Howard had seen everything he needed to see in their faces. At that moment, the door opened again, and Grace walked back in. She'd been sitting in her car, trying to compose herself, waiting for her father. Her eyes were red from crying, but she'd wiped her face and put on a brave expression. The moment Howard saw her, his jaw clenched. He walked straight to her, and his entire demeanor softened. Gracie, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. Are you okay? Grace nodded, trying to smile for her father's sake. I'm fine, Dad. Can we just go? Her voice was small, defeated in a way that broke Howard's heart. This was his daughter, who had a brilliant mind, who volunteered at homeless shelters, who treated janitors and CEOs with equal respect. And these people had made her feel worthless because of her clothing. The Wellingtons rushed over, apologies spilling from their mouths like water from a broken dam. Please, this is all a terrible mistake, Robert pleaded. We would never have said those things if we'd known. Grace looked at them, and her voice was steady despite the tears threatening to spill over again. That's the problem, though, isn't it? You wouldn't have treated me that way if you'd known who my father was, but you should never treat anyone that way, regardless of who they are or who they know. I wore this dress on purpose today. I wanted to see what people were really like when they thought I was nobody. And you showed me exactly who you are. Her words hung in the air, simple but devastating in their truth. Howard put his arm around his daughter's shoulders protectively. He turned back to the Wellingtons, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute finality. The deal is off. Robert's legs nearly gave out. Howard, please, you have to understand. We need this partnership. Our company is counting on this. We've worked for 18 months. Then you should have spent those 18 months learning how to treat people with basic human decency. Howard pulled out his phone and made a call right there on the terrace. Jennifer, it's Howard. Cancel all agreements with Wellington Corporation. Everything. The contracts, the letters of intent, all of it. Send them formal notice within the hour. He listened for a moment. No, it's not negotiable. I'll explain later. Catherine grabbed his arm, desperation overcoming propriety. Please, we'll lose everything. Our company will collapse. We have hundreds of employees who will lose their jobs. Howard gently but firmly removed her hand from his arm. Then perhaps you should have thought about those employees before you decided that being cruel to a young woman was an acceptable way to spend your afternoon. You didn't just insult my daughter, you revealed your character. And I don't do business with people who measure human worth by the price of their shoes. Trevor tried one last time, his voice cracking. We made a mistake, a stupid mistake. We'll do anything to make it right. The time to make it right was before you took that photo, before you humiliated her, before you made her cry in a parking lot. Howard's voice was ice. Some mistakes don't get second chances. This is one of them. As Howard and Grace walked toward the exit, the entire country club watched in stunned silence. The Wellingtons stood frozen, the weight of what had just happened crushing down on them. In less than 5 minutes, they'd lost everything. The $750 million deal that would have saved their company had evaporated because they couldn't resist being cruel to someone they perceived as beneath them. Robert sank into a chair, his hands shaking. Catherine stood in shock, mascara starting to run as reality set in. Trevor stared at his phone, at the mocking photo he'd sent to his friends, and slowly deleted it. But it was far too late. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Within a week, news of the collapsed deal spread through the business community. Wellington Corporation's stock plummeted. Investors pulled out. Banks called in loans. The empire that had stood for 3 generations came crashing down in a matter of months. They lost the mansion, sold at auction to pay creditors. Catherine's jewelry collection, Trevor's car collection, Robert's art, all of it went to satisfy debts. The country club quietly revoked their membership. Trevor had to take a job as a junior analyst at a firm where he once would have been the boss. Catherine and Robert moved into a modest townhouse, the kind of place they once would have sneered at. They learned to shop at regular stores, clip coupons, and understand what life was like for the people they'd always looked down upon. It was humbling in ways they never could have imagined. Grace, meanwhile, went on to work at her father's company. She started in an entry-level position, refusing special treatment, and worked her way up through genuine merit and dedication. She launched a program that provided internships and mentorship for underprivileged youth, kids who might never have gotten a chance otherwise. She never forgot that day at the country club, but she used it as motivation to ensure that no one in her sphere of influence would ever be judged by their appearance or background. Years later, Trevor saw her at a business conference. He'd been working hard, genuinely trying to rebuild his life and career with actual effort rather than entitlement. He approached her nervously during a break. "Grace, I know I don't deserve your time, but I wanted to say I'm sorry. Truly sorry, not because of who your father is, but because of who you are. What I did was cruel and inexcusable. I've thought about it every day since, and it changed me. I just wanted you to know that." Grace looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "I appreciate you saying that, Trevor. It takes courage to really change." She didn't offer friendship or absolution, but she gave him something perhaps more valuable: acknowledgement that people can grow. Then she walked away, surrounded by colleagues who respected her not for her last name, but for her character. The Wellingtons never got their empire back, but in losing everything, they gained something they'd never had before: perspective. Robert volunteered at a community center, teaching business skills to entrepreneurs who couldn't afford consultants. Catherine worked part-time at a nonprofit, helping families in financial crisis, seeing herself in their desperate faces. They weren't wealthy anymore, but they were, perhaps for the first time, genuinely decent. And that's how one family's cruel judgment cost them everything in seconds. Grace didn't need to announce who she was. Her character spoke for itself. The real test of a person isn't how they treat those who can help them, but how they treat those who they think can't. If this story reminded you to always choose kindness over arrogance, hit that like button and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below telling me what you would have done in Grace's situation. And don't forget to subscribe, because we've got more incredible stories of karma, justice, and life lessons coming your way. Until next time, remember, treat everyone with respect. You never know whose daughter, son, or parent you're talking to. See you in the next one.